Guyana. Guyana? How do you say Guyana's name? Guyana. Guyana. How do you say their name? How do I pronounce it? Guyana? Guyana? Maybe he'll say it. But he'll have an accent, so I won't like it. Take me to church! Because I've seen this graph. I actually talked about this. Wait, didn't I do a segment on this? Did I do a clip or something? I was talking about how Maduro wanted to invade Guyana for the oil. I talked about this. Yeah, 100%. Because it's gotten insane. It's gotten, like, overnight, the oil fields in this country have gotten, I need to fucking...
This is a real graph. It shows Guyana's per capita
Guyana. Okay, there it is.
production from 1960 to 2025. From its start until 2019, it was pretty respectable growth, nearly tripling. But then in 2020, it absolutely exploded. Pure hockey stick growth. Guyana has been by far the fastest growing economy of the 2020s, going from producing around $6,000 a person in 2019 to $34,000 just 6 years later. That's from lower than Peru's to higher than Spain's.
It's oil.
Reaching growth rates of up to 44% a year. Now, they're technically the richest people in South America. And I'll just tell you right now, this growth is entirely because they struck it rich and found oil.
Yeah.
In 2015, the Stabroek field off its coast was found to hold around 11 billion barrels of not just oil, but highly profitable oil of the best quality, light and sweet.
Light, sweet crude, baby. God, it just tastes better. The thing is about light, sweet crude is that it just fucking hits different, bro. It's just like, it's like refreshing. Instead of that heavy crude, that just like weighs you down. It's hard to refine. That Venezuela shit, no, you get that light, sweet crude right next door.
Just doing some rough math, that's at least $600 billion of oil given current prices, or around 120 times their pre-oil GDP.
Guyana needs some freedom, USA. Well, the thing is, and this is what I talked about, is Guyana already has ExxonMobil and Chevron. All the companies are there. They're printing. They don't need it. There's not going to be a freedom. They're already making money hand over fist. But I mean, you know, there's two directions you can take this, bro. I mean, listen, I understand there's an ideal world. There's an ideal world where Guyana has its own Exxon and Chevron doing everything. But at some point, you need someone to come in with the tech and the expertise. And it just depends on the split, really. I think they have a good split. I would love if he talks about their split. Because there's countries that have splits that are, it's win-win. The problem really with this is you get like, it depends on how good your leadership is. I don't know much about Guyana's leadership. Because if you have a good leadership, the smart thing to do historically is you negotiate the best split you can. 50-50, 60-40, whatever you can, okay? You get a split. You take that money, you invest it all in like actual smart diversification in public services. You try to fucking improve your country and diversify away from oil. The more realistic thing is that you siphon it off for your corrupt leaders. You spend a little bit on like public services to keep people from getting super angry, but it's mostly, and then you spend a lot of it on military tech to crack down. That's what most countries that get this kind of wealth do. They just get real corrupt with it. And then you can try to do what Venezuela did later and like, all right, well, we want the whole pie, so we're going to seize these oil fields from Exxon and Chevron. But the problem is if you don't have the expertise, they fall apart. They fucking collapse. The oil output of Venezuela went from like 3 million barrels per day to 1 million over that time period because everything fucking fell apart. So there's a lot to do here. I think there's a smart way to do it. It's obviously better than not having resources, I guess. But you heard of the thing called the Dutch disease? What was the original Dutch disease? What was the product? I just know the economic term. Dutch disease is the idea that you get some product that is so overwhelmingly profitable that it crowds out everything else. I think it was natural gas for the Dutch, but so like it becomes like everything else in Guyana will probably become uninvestable other than oil because everybody just focuses on the oil, and it actually cripples you because you lose every other industry.
In fact, if production goes as planned, Guyana will produce the highest amount of oil per person at over 1
It's like a
barrel a
resource
person a
curse.
day, owing to their relatively small population of only around 800,000 people. For reference, Saudi Arabia only produces around a third of a barrel a person a day. So even if the amount of oil is relatively smaller, not even making up the top 10 by proven reserves, it's going to go a lot further than these larger countries.
Yeah.
Now, the Guyanese political and economic scene has been absolutely dominated by this new cash. The main question?
Yeah,
What
what
do
to
you
do
do
with it?
with it?
Yeah,
Luckily
interesting.
for them, there's now been a century of petrostates to
Oh,
model the
wait, this is
economy
awesome.
after. The goal for many Guyanese people, as argued at the highest level of government, is the Norwegian model.
Okay.
Norway also produces oil off of
No,
its.
I swear to God, no pre-watch, and I'm actually super fascinated to hear this. It's like a video that I would love to see right after that conversation we just had. Because I'm speaking kind of riffing off of what I know from different petrostates, but I haven't deeply researched it, and I would like to know the different models and what they tried. Because I do think, like, dollars to donuts, it's better to find great resources in your country, of course. But so many countries have mismanaged it that it's like, it's like almost dangerous. It's like, it could be like the worst thing ever. It could really ruin your country. So it's like, if they're thinking about it in a smart way, that's really cool.
Coast. But instead of immediately spending that money, starting in the 1990s, chose to save a
Yeah,
good
it's like winning the
portion of
lottery.
it
It's
to
exactly right.
invest into a large government-led fund. That fund is now worth over $2 trillion, or
Sheesh.
over $350,000 a Norwegian. It's also one which is transparent, with strict oversights to depositing and spending rules, with maybe the biggest being that no more than 3% of it can be spent in a year. That's the goal. Guyana has, in
Yeah, it's
fact,
hype.
set up their own natural resource fund.
I
Now,
will say the whole fucking Norwegian sovereign wealth fund is like dumped into US tech stocks. So, so if there was ever a correction in US tech stocks, I swear to God, Norway would be kicking themselves.
worth at least $3.5 billion, or $4,000 a person. Not bad at all for a country just starting out. But Guyana is not Norway. They've had a long history of corruption, ethnic division, violence, and sit in a politically unstable region. A region
Hey, man, a cookie? Did you make these?
I baked them, but I bought the dough a little.
That's awesome.
Like,
Thank
try it. It's
you.
really good.
But Lobo keeps calling me fat, so I should probably can't eat a cookie on stream or he's gonna make fun of me.
Worth it.
Oh, that's very good. Oh, that's a good cookie. She just made a face. She made crazy eyes face.
Like, stupid good.
Damn, that's a hella good
Like,
cookie.
I don't think you're getting it.
Baby, you're fucking up the year of health. I'm gonna be fat.
One cookie.
Did you see? Look at this. Ludwig and I are just texting scales back and forth with each other.
It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, but like
You guys
he's
are
at
different heights, you're different muscle
179.1
composition.
and I'm 179.2.
So it doesn't mean
So-
anything. It literally
So I need to
doesn't.
get underneath his weight so I can call him fat.
Why? Like, you could have more muscle, you know?
I do have more muscle. He's scrawny.
Then it's,
Okay.
you should.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, babe. He's scrawny fat. Yeah, exactly. Damn, that's good. That's fucking tasty. Is Lud taller or shorter? Ludwig is 4'8" in clogs. Speaking of the Netherlands. So
that actually has two clear examples of how oil and gas revenue can make a country poorer and a more violent place to live, rather than inevitably bringing riches to its people. The next decade will be critical to avoid the fates of Trinidad and Venezuela. How can it use the money to bring positive change to its people? While the country depends on foreign oil companies today to extract the Stabroek, back in the day, it was foreign sugar companies they depended on. The biggest was Booker McConnell, which
Okay.
at one point owned around 85% of Guyanese plantations.
That's
This
wild.
one British company making up a third of
That's
the
crazy.
country's production. So the economic history of the country has always been centered
like the
around
banana
cash
cartels.
crops, going from sugar to gold to oil with some bauxite mixed in,
Holy fuck,
dependent
gold?
on dealing with and not pissing off British and American companies. Under its Dutch rule, it was a typical slave-based plantation economy until the British took over in the early 1800s, legally banning slavery. But, you know, cheap labor is cheap labor, and for another century they shipped in indentured laborers to work in the grueling sugar plantations. Most of them came from India, giving Guyana the ethnic split that
Banning
still
slavery,
exists
but
to this day. About 30% of Guyana's population is of African descent, while around 40% is of Indian descent.
it's like banning credit cards but allowing buy now, pay later. It's like you're just skirting it in name only, bro.
This division has manifested in some cases to large-scale violence, but more as a preferential treatment and resource allocation when one group is in power. I don't want to sound too reductive, but in general, the People's Progressive Party /Civic gets most of its support from Indo-Guyanese people, while the People's National Congress /APNU gets theirs from the Afro-Guyanese community.
okay.
Then some other parties pop up as broad coalitionist rainbow parties. Because of the larger Indian
Okay, that looks fun.
population, though, and this guy, the PPP is generally the party in charge, winning every free election the country has had except one. He,
Holy
by
shit,
the
what
way,
happened to that one?
was Forbes Burnham, Guyana's independence leader. Although the party was led by Chedi Jagan during the colonial era, British troops had kicked him out of power for fear that he was too radically Marxist.
Okay.
Instead, they wanted Forbes, the British-educated lawyer with CIA ties, to be in charge.
Okay.
He'd be a little more conducive to investment, they thought. But they were wrong. Forbes Burnham
bet.
actually ran an administration incredibly hostile to foreign money, ironically making Guyana one of the most socialist countries at the time. He declared the country a cooperative republic.
Okay.
Folks, we call them the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. During his rule, he ran many sham elections which were rigged in his
Wow.
favor, used violence to put down protests against his discriminatory policies towards the Indo-Guyanese community, favored his own loyalists with lucrative jobs and projects, and
Shocker.
through nationalization efforts, his government ended up running 80% of Guyana's production.
Cool.
Everything from distribution to
that.
export marketing, and yes, the mines and the sugar plantations as well. A sign of his great economic and political prowess were his import bans. Because sugar and bauxite prices fell during his rule, the government lost the ability to be able to purchase things from overseas.
Okay.
Instead of, I don't know, devaluing the currency, their best solution was to ban the import of things like flour, potatoes, split peas, that sort of thing. Things popular in Indian cooking.
Okay.
It also played into his idea of self-sufficiency. Guyanese farmers would pick up the slack by producing plantains and rice.
Oh, great.
They didn't, and many faced starvation.
Well,
His rule saw a decline in rice production, bauxite production, sugar production, anything to eat or make money with really, and political persecution. As a result, many packed their bags and left, contributing to Guyana being the country with the highest percentage of immigrants on Earth. Roughly 40% of people born there have left.
bigs.
Which now makes Liberty Avenue, Little Guyana, the best place in America for street interviews. After
Okay.
Forbes
Oh, I see.
Burnham died, voters gave the PPP a near uninterrupted streak of victories. Meanwhile, the newly nationalized sugar company, Gaisuco, systematically failed, one by one rusting out sugar plantations, laying off more and more workers
Yeah, this is what I'm talking
until
about.
the country finally found oil. A classic joke back in the colonial era was that BG didn't stand for British Guyana, but Booker's Guyana. Funny, right? Now they're calling it EG, Exxon's Guyana. Wow, ExxonMobil only owns the biggest share of Stabroek, being the ones to originally find its profitability. Then Chevron owns some, then the Chinese National Overseas Oil Company.
Oh, China's in there.
Its importance can be seen by the fact that Chevron only bought into Guyana in 2025, purchasing Hess's share for $53 billion.
Sheesh!
The world's largest private oil.
Wait, this must be some fucking sweet crude. Damn, they paid $53 billion for a little chunk? Damn, bro. This thing must be the fucking They must this got a deep well of that good shit.
Company now expects the Guyanese field to be its most profitable asset by 2030.
Wow.
In part, it's just because it's good oil, relatively clean and cheap to extract. But the other is
Holy shit.
relatively clean and cheap.
If it's profitable at $30 a barrel to extract, that's pretty good. That means it's relatively cheap to extract. Oil today is like $70 a barrel. So that's all juice. That's crazy. That's all profit, bro. You're fucking banking it. Like most other places would be 40, 50, 60 plus. I feel like I think I saw a number for Venezuela too right now when they're trying to get the fucking heavy crude. I feel like the extraction cost is so high they can't even bring it out profitably at current oil prices. I think like at $60 a barrel or whatever it was at the time, it was not profitable to get the oil out of Venezuela and refine it.
To extract. But the other is that
Fracking isn't profitable 155. Yeah, I know that fracking, but the thing about fracking, I don't know why this is. I need to look into it more. But when fracking first started to get big in America, OPEC deliberately cut their production. Deliberately flooded production to bring down the price of oil to try and kill fracking. They thought they would shut down all the fracking companies because they couldn't sell it profitably. But they just didn't die. They just kept doing it. Maybe it was a strategic thing. Maybe a government stepped in. I don't know why fracking in America didn't die during this, but they just kept fracking, and then America became the largest oil output.
they've gotten a great deal with the Guyanese government.
It could have been
The
subsidies,
profit
yeah.
sharing agreement signed in 2016 is one of the most generous to foreign companies on earth.
Oh yeah?
Even some conservative IMF economists have argued the Guyanese government is not getting its fair share out of it. The companies get all the profit until their cost is recovered, then 50% of the profit, and only give Guyana a 2% royalty. Meaning for a $60 barrel of oil, Guyana could expect to keep around $8.60. They did at a 10% royalty to develop.
This is Mr. Wonderful deal from Shark Tank. This is a Mr. Wonderful deal. They're getting royalties.
New
bro.
blocks, but not for the most profitable Stabroek block. Why do they give so much of it away? 1. It was signed in 2016 before the true amount of oil was known to anyone, and they just needed a kickstart into investment after years of stagnation. 2. The memory of Forbes Burnham's nationalizations still runs deep in the country. But 3. My personal guess as to why they didn't renegotiate this offer is that government officials do not need to look far at all to see how oil can ruin a country. Its next door neighbor, Venezuela, has descended into hyperinflation, economic crisis, and borderline state collapse because of their massive oil reserves. And Trinidad and Tobago, well, they're doing more or less fine, but have seen a huge rise in corruption and violence as a result of their own gas boom. Trinidad and Tobago is the country most similar to Guyana, which can make it quite scary to follow in their footsteps. Like Guyana, the legacy of both slavery and indentured labor lives on, with Trinis of African and Indian descent making up roughly equal parts of the population. The country struggles with a similar favoritism and corruption as a result, organized under respective political parties, the PNM and the UNC.
The UNC!
And both have transitioned from a failed sugar-based economy to a fossil fuel-based one. Its recent history is also a very textbook example of the resource curse.
Yeah.
From 2000 to about 2007, you can see a very Guyana-style boom in their economic output, then stagnation and even decline in the years since.
Okay.
While they had oil before, making up around 40% of the British Empire's output in the 30s, it wasn't until the liberal reforms of the
40% of the British Empire's oil output came from this little island? That's fucking crazy.
1990s that gas blew up, contributing to around 80% of their exports. Even more when you consider their large petrochemical industry. The gas boom brought free education, airports, highways, and subsidized electricity, gas, and water. You'd think it would make everyone happy and carefree. In 2011, it was even given high income status by the World Bank.
Holy.
But in the same year, Prime Minister Prasad Bisesar declared a state of emergency due to the rising crime and the emerging drug trade in the islands. Another was declared in 2025, but this time in the context of shrinking output and declining gas and chemical production.
Okay.
Their only oil refinery shut down in 2018
Kamala.
because of falling output and mismanagement by the National Petrotrin Company. And now the country is left with the 7th worst crime rate on Earth and a hollowed out
Well, that's not
rest
good.
of the economy. Parts of its capital, Port of Spain, like Cocorite and Beetim, have been taken over by gangs. Power and water failures are common in the outskirts. Agriculture dried up with the failure of sugar and cocoa. Subsidies have been largely cut back. And tourism, outside of Carnival season, is very underwhelming for a lovely Caribbean destination.
Sad.
All they have is gas. Classic Dutch disease.
Yeah.
But that's nothing compared to the country with the worst crime rate, just to its south.
Big V.
Venezuela's oil-based economy was always ailing, but it collapsed under the Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro governments. The oil was a perfect gift for Chavez, who promised to use it to fund his utopian vision of the country. And in 2007, he seized ExxonMobil's and ConocoPhillips' assets to monopolize oil production under his government. Long story short,
Chavez is what Lud thinks Atrioc looks like. Just call me fat, bro. Just skip the middleman.
corrupt officials drained their fund dry, and Venezuela splurged on social and redistributive programs during oil's boom years. When Venezuelan oil workers went on strikes, crashing production, and oil's price collapsed, so did its abilities to pay for them. The state
Yup.
oil company, the PDVSA, is also filled with corrupt party loyalists without much technical expertise, while they're also subject to American sanctions. Basically, Venezuela does not produce nearly as much oil as they could. Instead of cutting back the programs, though,
Yeah,
the
I mean, prior to all this, Venezuela was putting out the amount of barrels per day, like equivalent to Canada. And then after all this, it's like Canada, I think, tripled and Venezuela 1/3. So now they're like a ninth of what they probably could be with modern tech.
government chose to print more money, leading to one of the worst hyperinflations in modern history. Now, for the last 2 decades or so, Venezuela has struggled with hunger, state collapse, and mass emigration, while strong men tried to rally and hype up the population
Damn, he
to
can't dance, though.
keep themselves in charge.
He can dance.
One of these rallying tactics was a push against a natural enemy of the Venezuelan people, Guyana. That's right, the Maduro government claimed this chunk of Guyana, all the land to the Essequibo River, leaving what would only be a thin strip behind. That's 2/3 of Guyanese land. This is a dispute that actually dates back 200 years. When Britain
Too
amalgamated
loud.
these 3 Dutch colonies into one, Venezuela claimed Essequibo as theirs. It was finally
turned it up,
mediated
sorry.
by an American-led team in 1899, who ruled it to be British/Guyanese territory. Venezuela initially
Didn't they used to
accepted
call it
this.
British Guyana?
However, as those in Caracas have turned from some of the most pro-American on the continent to some of the least, they've become more emboldened to push back against this ruling. And I think maybe, just maybe, in the modern version of this dispute, Maduro might have liked the extra oil production, as he also claimed the waters outside of
This was
Essequibo
100% the
as
reason.
his.
Whatever that reason is, it was 100% Maduro wanted to fund Venezuela with this oil. 100%. That was the reason. That was he started talking about it the second they discovered it here and started. It wasn't like it wasn't even a thing until
When Guyana initially allowed U.S. companies to look for oil, Venezuela cut them off of its Petrocaribe program, which shipped subsidized oil across the Caribbean. Then, in the December of 2023, a referendum was held to ask the Venezuelan public if they wanted to annex this land. 98% said yes, a resounding victory. They appointed a governor for their new state of Guyana Essequiba in a sham election, held military parades and drills near the border, showing off maps of their official territory, even positioning
Bro,
near the border, showing off
this is some Trump shit. This is some Trump shit, bro. Just make a fake map showing. Just fucking pretend.
maps of their official territory, even positioning Iranian-built missiles on the water outside of Guyana and a warship off of Exxon's oil tanker. It really looked like for a couple of years, Venezuela was about to strike Guyana any day now, and subsequently be beaten back by Brazil, the UK, and obviously America. But none of that happened. I don't know if you saw the news, but they got Maduro. Yes, after months of American strikes on Venezuelan ships for fear of narcotic smuggling, they finally struck the capital. American forces seized the leader of Venezuela.
Look at
and
that
just
animation.
Flew him
Holy
off
fuck.
to New York City. Just like that.
Holy fuck.
I think, besides wanting to look cool and make some AI art about it,
And now, if you don't know, now you know.
there were three main political objectives of this scoop job. One is obviously oil.
The United
Yeah.
States seized 1.9 million barrels of oil on December 10th.
We're gonna keep it. We're keeping.
Venezuela seized American oil assets through Chavez's nationalizations as well as some decades ago, and the Trump administration wanted to recoup it. Two was to weaken the Communist Party in Cuba, which relies on subsidized Venezuelan
That was a
oil
big
to
part of it
keep
for
living
Rubio
conditions up. But three, an overlooked aspect is that Guyana is now going to be a strong American ally in the region, and American businesses may not be too keen to invest in the region if Maduro is constantly yelling about an invasion.
Right.
Guyana will be the crown jewel in ExxonMobil's and Chevron's collections in the 2030s. They'd probably like some reassurance that their oil rigs won't be hit by a Venezuelan missile anytime soon. And the American administration happened to be one very open to the idea of big business-backed imperialism in the late 2020s to keep that assurance. So after that mess, Guyana's question is, how do you avoid the fate of Venezuela? Yes, oil brings billions of dollars, but it also brings corruption, rent-seeking, economic weakness, and violence.
Yeah.
The route Guyana is almost certainly going to go is to try to replicate Norway's government pension fund. That requires a whole host of financial measures, inclusivism, and constant upkeep. Any sort of opaqueness or corrupt politics could derail the whole thing, as in Venezuela.
Yeah.
When Guyana actually has the money, though, should it go the Alaska route of directly paying its citizens and letting them choose how to spend their money, or the Dubai route where those in charge build grand projects in
Definitely
hopes
not
of
the fucking
trickling
Dubai
down
route.
prosperity? As in infrastructure.
Wait. Isn't the Norwegian model neither of those? It's they put it into a wealth fund and they can use a small percentage of it each year for like public works or whatever. It's like, isn't that why would you could give it to them directly. I think that would be a better option than this. But, giving to them directly has other problems because then it becomes cost effective for people to not, start a sugar plant or whatever. Anything that would be a good development strategy becomes under the cost line because of the free money they're getting from oil. That's not infinite. So you really, I don't know.
Structurally challenged country, most people recommend the latter option. Now, new schools, hospitals, and gyms are popping up among the wooden houses of the capital, Georgetown. New ports, dams, and highways connect the country to its interior and the rest of the world.
The problem with this is that you give all this money to some bureaucrat and tell them, decide what thing we should build to be ready for the future. And because they are human and biased and small, they build the wrong thing. They waste the money. It's either super corrupt or they just build shit that like is cool to cut the ribbon on, but it's never the smart thing. Dubai has this, or they steal it. Yeah. So Wendy's not a bad idea though. Wendy's not a bad idea. Everybody loves a Wendy's.
Starbucks and Wendy's opened up in 2025. Very important to have those. The floating Demerara Bridge was replaced with a grand permanent bridge in late 2025, and the country is building a $2 billion gas pipeline to hopefully cut electricity costs in half.
That's a good idea.
To diversify its economy by lowering its manufacturing.
That's a really good idea because all this oil production produces a ton of natural gas naturally. It's just a natural byproduct of the pumping process. And if you could power your electricity on that for cheaper, actually a really smart idea.
Manufacturing costs. But perhaps the most important things to build are its flood protections. Because the country was built by the Dutch, it wasn't actually a country, but a sea that had to be drained, usually by the backbreaking labor of the slaves they shipped in. Most of the sugar plantations were built on land.
What if, and this is just a big what if they destroy the oil production, destroy the natural gas, destroy the sugar, and go all in on clean coal? What if they go 100% in on clean coal? I don't know if they have a lot of coal mines there, but they should find them. Because I think that's a future forward industry. I think that way they're not only building for the future, but they're environmentally sound. Beautiful clean coal.
And which was maintained by dams.
Or go the Saudi route and buy teen boy shit as investments. That was the example I was saying earlier. I just wasn't labeling them specifically. Like, you can buy soccer teams and a bunch of stupid bullshit, like at way overpriced valuations that you're going to lose money on, invent the idea of the line, host an esports tournament, all this shit like you lose money on and pretend like you're diversifying, but you're not actually doing it. They should hold WrestleMania in Guyana.
Trenches and dikes to create its typical landscape. Ocean, seawall, farms.
I mean, if you're studying other countries and what they did right, you got to have Mr. Beast World right here. Get rid of the farms. Food is not as important as entertainment. And let's get Mr. Beast World west, okay? So that you have in different hemispheres. People from all over the world can either go to Saudi Arabia or they can go here.
As a result, about 90% of the population lives at least 2 feet below sea level, making floods particularly damaging. Anytime it rains too much, Georgetown's gonna flood. Speaking of floods, after a tailing dam collapsed in 1995, releasing 1.5 million tons of cyanide-laced water through the Essequibo River, people started to think environmental protections may be more important than corporate rights. Guyana is now one of the least deforested countries on Earth.
That's hype.
Under their low-carbon development strategy, they've even secured $250 million from Norway to keep its forests standing.
Okay.
It's ironic considering that this is now the world's newest petrostate, one which is quite hostile to any sort of foreign production limitations on oil.
Does that give you the right to release all of this carbon? Does that give you the right to lecture us on climate change? I am going to lecture you on climate change because we have kept this forest alive that stores 19.5 gigatons of carbon that you enjoy, that the world enjoy, that you don't pay us for.
In the last election in 2025,
technically Norway did pay you for it. I like that he's talking his shit, but you did get a quarter bill from Norway.
The first one in the context of this new economy, the PPP saw its biggest win ever. Most Guyanese people may seem willing to bend the rules a little on its environmental protections to keep this breakneck growth.
Sure,
that means leaving behind the past and forging itself into a brand new country. If you enjoyed this video, why not subscribe?
I did enjoy it. Check it out. Hoser, check it out. I thought it was a good video. Yeah, pretty interesting, pretty balanced. It's a tough choice. I think, dollars to donuts. I would fucking, in their position, try to renegotiate the deal, get a slightly better split, and start with the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund. You have to it's tough. Every step of the way is hard. That's just being human, bro. Every step of the way, you got to fight corruption.